answer the question if you can do inputs and outputs with the Dobot Magician, the answer is yes. If you take a look, if you go to Pro Mode, we went to Pro Mode up here, and we can take inputs and outputs, and if you see over here I've got one doing a pulse width modulation right here, and I've got one doing just a digital high and a low, and then what I've done is I've come up here to the robot, into the arm, and I've plugged in, made this one digital as an output, and this one analog or pulse width as an output. And so now when it gets to that spot in the program, when it gets to the pulse width part, it makes the servo move, and then when I get to the digital part, I can trigger my handshake module to make it send a signal. And what I did was I just did this short program. The robot's staying in the same place. It's just toggling the two things, and I made it do a loop up here 100 times, so it's looping through the analog and the digital portions, outputs, 100 times each. So we know inputs work. So I wanted to try to use outputs to make the robot talk to a grinder, which is a servo, continuous rotation servo with PWM signal, and that didn't work out so well. Every time I come over here and try to make one of these a pulse width modulation point, the software closes. So what I did was, instead, I just hooked up an LED to simulate the grinder and ran that up to the same output up here, which is output number 4. I just have another one wired. I was going to try to do two things at once, but let's just stick with one. And then all I had to do was make sure that in the software I went to Pro up here, and after I went to Pro up here, I was able to come over here and add points and be able to come down and add inputs and outputs. I've not tried inputs yet. That's going to be kind of crazy, but like I said, the outputs, at least I can get an LED to blink, which means I can send a signal to a VEX Cortex through an optical isolator. So let's just start the program and see what happens. So I can make the LED come on, simulate the grinder, and then put the part back and the LED will turn off. And that's done. I did that on over here in EIO 4, input output 4, input output 3. Weird thing, when I go to add, let's say I wanted to remove the low and just have nothing there. That's not an option anymore. It's only low or high. And then over here, let's see if I go over here and I try to make this a pulse width modulation, which would run my grinder. I get this window up here, and a regular pulse width for a servo is 50 Hertz. So I'm going to say 50 Hertz and a duty cycle of 50%. And when I say OK, there goes my software. And usually it'll just crash and not work at all. So I just got to work that out. But we can definitely send signals with either ons, lows, and highs, and we can use our handshake modules to be able to talk to VEX stuff using a couple inputs and outputs up here. There's lots of inputs and outputs. I think there's 18 in the manual.